Hello, brilliant souls. Welcome to Rainbows in Real Life, the show dedicated to bringing positivity to the forefront, celebrating the power and promise of the human spirit, and supporting each other in challenging times. We believe when we join together, we all live better lives, and we are exploring ways we can do that in today's ever-changing world. I'm Pamela Aubrey, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Christopher Rausch, the No Excuses Coach, and our very special guest, Danny Mendoza. So welcome to the show, you guys.
What's going on? What's going on? Good to see you, Pam. Good to see you, Danny. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good. Thank you all for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk about foster care and see what we can teach people about it, and talk about some of the issues that are going down right now.
Awesome. We appreciate you being here. And for you guys that are tuning in either live or on the replay, as always, we appreciate you engaging with us, either your thoughts or your comments, or of course, your questions for any one of us. So whether, again, live or on the replay, just make sure you guys are engaging with us. We'd love to have this conversation with you and just dive right into it and just kick off into it.
Hi, Twain. Welcome to the show. Great to have you. Great to have you all here, and super excited to jump into this conversation with you, Danny. And before we do that, I just wanted to pose a question for the audience to think about and answer. And also, thank you for sharing this out. We really appreciate you being here and also appreciate you sharing. So I would like to ask everyone, how do you think improving the foster care system would improve our society? So that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. And I want to sort of jump into that a little bit with you, Danny. And just first, though, tell us a little bit about you and some of the backstory to Together We Rise.
Yeah, so my name's Danny. I'm the founder of Together We Rise, and we're a nonprofit that helps children in foster care nationwide. A little bit how I started was, basically in a nutshell, I had a family member that was 9 years old and went homeless and was living in a car. And, I was going to Cal State Fullerton, just trying to be a lawyer, doing my thing. And, when I learned about it, it was just kind of shocking. It's never kind of hit home. You hear about it, you see it when you're driving. It doesn't, it's not your family, so it doesn't affect you. But when it happened to me, I was shocked and didn't know that it could really happen. And, I was just trying to help him in that process. I didn't have a place of my own and didn't have space where I was at. And I was just like, well, I've heard about this thing, foster care. I know nothing about it, but I knew that this kid on my soccer team when I was younger, lived in one and he didn't have a family. So how could I get my cousin in there? And at that time, it was unknown. And during the research process, I was just kind of stunned and shocked on how terrible the system was, and no fault of their own. It's just so many complications and lack of foster parents, kids going through trauma, people not being prepared for those youth going into the system. And I was, I couldn't put my cousin in there. I had to do more. And so that's kind of, where the idea started. And, as I started, and I think the one thing that stood out to me was, my parents are immigrants here, and they came from Mexico, and they've always told me I could be whatever I wanted to be as long as I did the work. And we were the greatest country in the world. And to see that children in foster care were the government's kids, and they didn't have those same opportunities, I was dumbfounded. It didn't make sense to me because my father really sold me this dream, and for him he was living in the dream, what he wanted in his mind, and to give us that opportunity. And so, I just decided that I had to do something that was, more meaningful with my life. And, it was hard for my parents, but because they've always wanted me to be this rich, successful lawyer. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, you're the one that needs help. Right. But we were able to kind of just change the way I looked at life and just be more appreciative of everything they provided for me and seeing how I could provide that for a child in care.
So what were your next steps in doing that and getting into the foster care system and realizing that it was really jacked up? You're going to school, you're going to Cal State Fullerton, you're wanting to become a lawyer. What kind of opportunities did you have to change, and what did you learn about the foster care system to be able to help your cousin?
Oh man, it's not even the opportunities, it was the challenges, right? I was 19 years old, and you have to be 21 to really be involved in the foster care system. I signed up to be a CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocate here in Orange County. And I went to the first 2 classes, and they eventually came time to ask me for my age, and they're like, "Oh, you're too young." And I was like, well, I still want to help. Like, how can I help? And that's really where it began. Was I didn't want my age to stop me from being able to help. So the original focus was, all right, how can me and my friends still make a difference? So I ended up, going to a local group home and convincing the volunteer coordinator to let me just play soccer with the kids on Wednesdays.
Wow.
And then from there, they started kind of like trusting me and got to know me. And, I wanted to be able to do more. And starting a charity was essentially the loophole to be able to help these kids without having to worry about my age. Because, you come in as an organization versus a 19-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went to legalzoom.com and filled out a form, put my credit card in, and then it asked me for your treasurer and your secretary. And so my best friend's mom was a secretary at the school, so I put him down. And then my friend had just gotten his first job at Bank of America, so I put him down as the treasurer that none of them knew. I ended up calling them after, and that's how we started. And I think 2 weeks later, I set up a meeting at New York Pizzeria here in Chino, and 20 to 30 of my friends showed up. And I was just like, whoa, like
So
all
cool.
these young people want to make a difference. And that's literally how we started.
That is just really, truly amazing. I mean, you really probably had no idea at that time what you were really getting yourself into. I mean, you probably didn't at that point really even understand the system itself. And so tell us about what that was like, just, going into the system, seeing what was happening, and then trying to figure out what you could do to really make a difference.
Yeah, I think, going into the system and seeing how complicated it was. And there wasn't social media like how it is today. There was MySpace, and it was still kind of, high school kids and, college kids were starting to get on, and it was still kind of being fresh to the world. And for me, like meeting social workers, they were so confused. They were just like, what do you want to do? Like, why do you want to help us? And like, Tom's Shoes was like barely like starting to be popular. And to me, I credit Tom's Shoes for really making giving back a normal and cool thing at that point. And so it was a lot of confusion. I really had to put my money where my mouth was. And, I started donating basically my entire paycheck to help kids, and people started to see it. And our big thing was, hey, let's just pay for everything. Let's show people what we're doing. And if people like it, they'll help, because no one's going to trust us. I mean, I did not have the best reputation in high school. I played football. I honestly, I was a bully, and I thought that was cool at that point growing up. I could remember like going to my job in college, and interacting with the first person that identified as gay in my entire life. Like I was like, whoa, like I've seen a gay person, now I'm like interacting with one, and I learned so much about the world through him and his perspective. And he even told me, like, as I was telling him about foster care, he's like, a lot of kids in foster care identify as LGBTQ, and it's like 30% or something crazy. Like I was just like, whoa, like. And it just gave me a new perspective and excitement. And when I met the social workers, they were, I just had to show them that, there's a lot of great people that want to help if they could provide us a path. And that's basically where it started.
Wow. And I appreciate you so much for sharing that. I mean, being 19 years old and getting a calling to go out there and help people and give your entire paycheck. I mean, man, mad respect to you, mad respect to you. And thinking about what happened, your cousin sticks in my head. Whatever became of that situation, were you able to provide any assistance to him, and how is he doing now?
Yeah, so I was able to provide some assistance, not as much as I wanted to. He taught me you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And as I traveled throughout the country and learned and met group homes, I had the privilege to sit with the Secretary of Education at the time, about 10 years ago, at a panel with foster youth from around the country. And every single kid said, you could not have gave me anything more to change my outcome. It was until I went to jail that I decided to make a difference for myself. It was until I had a child and I looked into their eyes, that's when I decided to change and, applied. I was like, that's where my cousin is. That's where he's at. It's, I established a foster care scholarship in his name, which is the largest in the country for any foster youth. And he I gave him the application and didn't put his name on it. It wasn't, he didn't want the handout. He just he was so confused. I was like, all you got to do is get a reference letter and fill this out. And I didn't tell him the amount, didn't do all that. I met with him, I had lunch with him. He didn't do it. And it was just, he wasn't at the point where he wanted the help. And it was tough. And it was for me, I was like, well, look, I have to move on. I literally just put myself in the most uncomfortable conversation when I got this scholarship, utilizing your story and another student's story. And I asked that person if I could bring you on. And it was I was like, I don't want to ask for my family. I'm out here. At that point, I was already helping a lot of kids. And, it taught me a lot about life. So a lot of my focus from there was, how do I help kids that want the help?
I think that's huge. And, I think Russell Brand always says that, trauma is the gateway drug to, all these other things, all these other problems that people have in their life. And I think, that's kind of what you see in people when they've been through trauma, is that they don't know how to receive anymore. They've been in survival mode for so long that when you try to move them beyond that, it's kind of like, what? That doesn't make any sense, And so I'm curious, now that you've been working with the system for a while, what are some of the things that you see now that are better and things that haven't really changed, and how, those of us who are outside of all of this can have an impact?
Yeah, I think a lot of things are better. I think we played a small role in it, but we definitely, utilize our platform to educate people, but just, finding ways to help foster youth. I think the biggest misconception of foster care is that if the only way to help a foster child is to be a foster parent. And that is, absolutely not the case. And we pride ourselves on providing ways to help during the holidays, during back to school, or creating a handful of different ways where you can help a child without having to make that big commitment. And I think now we're starting to see them everywhere. We're starting to see the trash bags that they usually get when moving from home to home being replaced. We've been doing it for a long time. There's a lot of small organizations that are popping up. We're reaching out to them like, hey, if you guys are going to do it, here's where you can get your bags for the cheapest way. If you need help, let us know. Make sure people are not just giving you crappy stuff. Make them pay for a brand new bag. Here's the time when you should go to Walmart and try to get a sale. And just really getting those people excited about bringing change in their community. I think that's huge, just as a society as a whole during that time. And now, just making sure people are aware that foster care doesn't mean that there's a bad kid. It has nothing to do with that. No child, for the most part, as a general statement, chose to be in foster care. They just, at Together We Rise, we call it the parent lottery. I hit the parent lottery. I was not rich. I never got what I wanted. I can quote that. My parents would get mad, but I always had what I needed. And these kids don't have that. They don't know what's right from wrong. They're still adjusting. And that trauma that they face, oh my God, it goes on for the rest of their entire lives. They suffer PTSD 2 to 3 times higher than war veterans because it happens at such a young age. Yeah. And there's, once you turn 18, that's it. And I think the government has done a great job in many states in the past 5-6 years to extend it to 21. Now there's talks about 24. Now there's talks about how do we extend the mental health services till they're 40, because of the reality, PTSD is real. And I think we've, as a society in the last 20 years, have started to understand that, bullying, right? I unfortunately participated in that in high school because I thought it was a cool thing to do. Looking back at it, I've reached out to so many people apologizing, saying whoa, I just thought that was a cool thing to do. And now we're learning that whoa, guys, this is, I read stories online about how people were treated in the football locker room. And I'm like, that was our locker room. We thought that was normal. Now we're trying to see the effects. And I think that seeing society change and now understand it's actually really helpful for foster youth, as they're not just deemed as bad kids. They're just kids that have been through trauma, and now there's information and research out there to see that, hey, these are some steps that we can do to help them. And now there's trauma-informed care for foster parents, which is something we're working on right now to educate people. But it's really cool to see the positive changes that have been happening all over. Obviously, when you're working with government, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's, people have really stepped up. But the future is bright. It's not going to happen as fast as we all want, but I think social media has helped make people aware of how they can help and what the issues are.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, especially because that's what we're very passionate about is not just hearing the information, but being able to personally and collectively through our audiences create that action that we need to take. So in your opinion, when you said there's a lot of different things that we could do, one of the things we've been talking about a lot lately with Black Lives Matter and everything else that's been going on is the fact that we as individuals have the right to vote. And I personally have realized that I have taken that a little bit too lackadaisically, I guess. And like, oh yeah, who's my city council person? Who's this person? I'll just pick. What are some of the key offices that we can look at in order to really look at the foster care, who oversees the foster care system, and how can we be able to be a little bit more cautious in who we vote for to make sure that they're supporting what it is that we need to do for the kids?
Yeah, politics is a tricky boat, and there's no winning on that one. I'll tell you that much. And there's my personal beliefs, and there's the organization beliefs. But what I've learned about politics is the county of supervisors are some very, very powerful people. I once asked myself too, is how do we get involved? How do we get politicians involved? But it's county of supervisors are the people that disperse the money to the foster agencies, to the counties, who then, provide the services to the children. So, I have no idea as an uninformed citizen who's on the county of supervisors. There's just so many levels, and foster care is a county level. It's not a city level. So, I'm here in Brea, right? So people are like, I want to help kids in Brea. Like, I have no idea if there's a foster family in Brea or not. That's not how they're categorized, right? They sign up through, hey, I want to be a foster parent, and the agency, is registered through the county, so they place children in Orange County, not the city. And so, for the political side, county supervisors, who are they? I have no idea. I'm sure they're great people trying to do their best.
Interesting.
You're a nice person.
I know that there are a lot of ways that parents can get involved, certainly, or just individuals, not just parents, but can get involved with your agency and help support you and what you're doing for these kids. So can you tell us a little bit about some of those projects and different ways that people can support you?
Yeah, so our biggest way of giving back is we have programs from ways that are more hands-on involved. So we have like these things called giving back boxes, which allow you to give back from home. So we have one focus on the duffel bag to replace the trash bag. So through our Safer at Home initiative, things have changed a little bit just because we didn't want the families to go directly to the agency, with the agency not wanting just a lot of people coming to their offices right now. So what we do is we ship out kits for your family or groups to get involved, from your work to your church to your Girl Scout troop to just a family night. One of our favorites that people do a lot is a girls' wine night. So we ship them a panel that they can decorate, and that panel then gets placed on a duffel bag, and then we ship that duffel bag over to a foster agency. We also have skateboards that people buy unassembled, and they build them together with their friends or families. We have the same with birthday boxes. We have superhero boxes. Next month, we're going to be launching STEM boxes, so that way we can get those over. So a lot of these activities are made that, you're able to engage and learn about it, and then pack it all up, send it back, and then we get it over to the foster agency either in your community or where the actual need is, because the need is different. This is an easy example, right? And this is a cliche and generalization again, but if you're in Beverly Hills, there most likely won't be a lot of foster parents or foster children in your community. Primarily, historically, it's changing, but a lot of the foster parents were located near where the kids get removed, and the majority of that happens in low-income neighborhoods. $600 to $1,500 is not a lot to a family that's busy and that already has a whole family of their own. But for families that are in low-income communities, this does help them kind of assist themselves and provide that support. And to me, people talk about that, but it's a whole nother topic we can get into.
Well, and I know you also have birthday boxes, which I absolutely love. I can't wait for my birthday now so I can do a birthday box. Maybe I need to do an unbirthday box, Can you tell us about those as well?
Yeah, so the birthday box is really designed for you guys to decorate a banner for a child in foster care and, fill up their box, and they get like a gift certificate to ice cream. It's basically how to throw a party in a box. So it's all the decorations to decorate your room. It's a small gift. It's really just gives that experience. And, a lot of kids, and I hate to say this because it's not everyone, but when it's, if it's 200 kids around this country, it's too many. They don't know when their birthday is. And it's pretty crazy. And I've heard it time and time again. And this is no discredit to foster parents. This is no discredit to social workers. They're just moving. They move 2 to 3 times per year. And if it happens during that change, when trauma is going on, the social worker is worried about finding them a home, and sometimes those small things get overlooked. And at the end of the day, like, their job is to get them a home. Like, that's their main key. And unfortunately, in some areas, they have too many caseloads where they can't possibly manage that. And, our job is to help give those tools and resources to the foster parents and the social workers to do so. A lot of these foster parents don't have the funds to go and buy gifts for their kids. And yeah, they're getting money, but that's for living expenses. That's to support their family, to help support that child. And some people, like, they don't see it as a big deal. Like, to me, like, I think it's important. And, I don't want to say that kids don't celebrate their birthdays because their parents or social workers don't care. They do. Just sometimes in the midst of the height of the transition, the foster parent might not get all the information for about a week or two when that child is placed. Especially in like an emergency placement, take the kid away on a Friday night, place them Saturday. Social worker says, hey, can they just sleep there tonight? Let us figure everything out in the morning or on Monday. And they're like, cool, we'll take them in, make sure they're safe. We're still doing the investigation. And sometimes in that process, that birthday falls in. So our job is to make sure that we stack these offices of social workers and CPS workers with birthday boxes. They just grab it and take it. And they're all decorated by families all over the country. You decorate the outside of the box. You decorate some of the items inside. It's a small, simple thing that we take for granted. But for that one kid, you honestly can change their life. And that change of life isn't from the birthday box. It's that somebody remembered them and remembered that they mattered.
Wow. That's so powerful.
It is. That's so beautiful that you do that, man. Seriously, it gets me choked up because I think about how many times when I was homeless, fortunately my mom would become super mom no matter what situation we were in. It was birthday or Christmas. I mean, she would go to the dollar store and figure out how to get me 3 things to do that for me. But yeah, thank you for doing that and making that difference in kids' lives. Cause I know I've known kids that were like that didn't have anything for their birthday or for Christmas or for anything else. So thank you for doing that. And one of the things that, I love about the physical stuff, that we can get them, but, in terms of going back to the PTSD you talk about the life skills that these kids need to learn, is there any part of your program that addresses that, being able to remediate some skills or give them life skills? Because I know personally, you're probably familiar with Olive Crest Children's Foundation, obviously. So I've done a lot of work mentoring with them out here in Riverside, gone to the group homes out there and mentored all those kids. So through that organization, I've found a way to use my gifts to be able to give back to those kids. But is there a part of your program that addresses that as well?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts. We do provide scholarships to college foster youth, and we do mentor them and participate, guarantee them internships, make sure they get jobs. Through COVID, we've provided over 1,200 kids with hundreds of thousands of dollars dispersed between all of them for housing, for paying utilities, making sure that they have interview clothes, and making sure that they can find a mentor and educating on them. But for the most part, it's more focused on that youth getting through the school side. Our job primarily is we like to see ourselves as like an introduction to foster care. We tell a story so that you learn about it and can get involved in an easy way. And then we want to work your way up to it. We want to introduce you to CASA, which are the court-appointed special advocates, to find them in your county and go be a mentor. We think it's really, really important for people to have an easy way in versus, be overwhelmed and scared by saying, hey, you can be a foster parent or a mentor. We're like, whoa, like, let's start small. Let's sponsor a duffel bag. If you want to sponsor a bike, you want to sponsor a kid to go to Disneyland, start there, start learning about how these kids are treated, what they go through. And that's usually when we get the best result. So that's kind of our specific focus. And we do have, programs throughout all ages, from shopping sprees for teenagers to the scholarships and bikes, so they have transportation to work. But our main key is that introductory to what's going on in the world without overwhelming these potential foster parents or mentors or supporters.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I think one of the things I want to just kind of add to this, I noticed there's a lot of comments coming in from the audience, and so I want to be able to share some of these. But I find it interesting that this is something that has been kind of undiscussed, in my opinion, up to this point when it comes to foster care, really, and the world of adoption. It's just this idea of trauma, the impact that losing parents has on children. There's sort of this kind of like pie in the sky, like, oh, well, you found a family, so it's all good now, kind of thinking that's gone on in the past. And I think, like you were saying, we're waking up to the fact that that's not really necessarily always the case. And so I'm curious to know how you foresee that might change in the future, if there's some evolution taking place there. So I want you to have a chance to talk about that. But before we jump into it, I just want to have a chance to kind of say hi to everyone. I've seen Twain Mason on here. Thank you for being here, Twain. Scott, thanks for being here. Erica, Esther, Temi, really appreciate you all coming on, sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Really great answers that have come up, and we'll come back to those a little bit later here because I want to address some of the comments that have been made, but I'll let you speak to my question now.
Yeah, I think this is where Hollywood really plays a role in this, right? A lot of naturally, somehow, I don't know the science behind it, but the negative news sticks with us longer than the positive news. And when we see these movies about, you adopt a child, next thing you know, they're in your room with a knife and it's a horror flick. It's just, those stick with us. I had this conversation with family members of, they're huge foster care advocates in adoption. They're like, well, what if they have issues? And, I personally tried to run away from my home like 4 times, and I had no issues. Those issues came from my parents. So I think it's hard. I think we hold children in foster care that are potentially for adoption or that are adoptable at a different standard, right? When a child has a bad day, most likely they'll call their social worker and be like, this child is not the one for me. And when our children do it, I see it at the mall. I see it at, when we used to be able to go to the stores, kids are on the floor crying. Like, I personally don't comment because I know one day that might be me. But kids act out. They're learning. And unfortunately, some of the youth in foster care, yes, they have gone through trauma. 100%. We're not going to neglect that fact. Can they, transition into what people think a normal child is? 100%. And your normal is different between everything else. And I think that going into foster care, first of all, not all foster kids are adoptable. Foster care is, hey, you are being a support family for this youth until their parents get better. Reunification is always the best. Obviously, there's certain acts that I believe should never be reunified, right? That's a whole different scenario. But your goal is to be there and support them. If their parents aren't getting out of jail or they've committed something that, adoption isn't a thing, it is a process for these youth to kind of reintegrate, right? Like, I've had youth that, a common thing that I've seen is, kids that come from families that never fed them, they will hoard food. They will hide food under their beds before adoption or after.
Yep.
They have to learn about the food insecurities that they're facing because of what they grew up with. Will they, eventually, adjust? Yeah, 100%. I think it's just harder for some families to accept that it's a process, right? No child that has been through what they've been through is going to be to their standard of normal overnight. It takes a lot for a social worker in general, like I said, there are extreme cases that they just make these decisions, but it takes a lot for a social worker to say, hey, you are safer in a random house than with your family. And they do understand the consequences of their choices. And when they pull that child out, it's for the best. And when they're put up for adoption, in theory, generally speaking, it's for the best. And I think that providing the right training to potential foster parents for adoption is really the key for that, right? It's not this child needs to be fixed. It's you need to understand how that child is going to adjust and how they're going to get to their form of normal. And it's just a time period. So it's, if people can understand that, I mean, these kids are amazing. I've never met a foster parent that regretted their adoption, hands down. They all said it was not easy. I mean, I repeat that to the day, and we post a lot of incredible adoption stories. And sometimes we try to put it, hey, like, this is a success story. You do not see the work. It's just like when you post on Instagram a picture of a nice car that you bought, nobody knows what you put in to actually do it. And I hope people that they're not deterred, they shouldn't be deterred by that. You should understand that if you are there for the child, you're there for the child. No child is perfect. I mean, half the things that happen from kids, shootings or whatever, it's not from generally a foster student. It's just a kid that was going through some trauma and no one knew how to address it.
Yeah. And, I think it's important for people to understand too, like you were saying earlier, that you're not necessarily expecting everyone to be a good fit for being a parent. There are so many ways to get involved and so many things to do. But if you're that person that feels like maybe you've been called to do something like that, I think for a lot of people, there could be hesitation around that because they don't know a lot about the system, or maybe they feel like, well, can I really trust that the social workers are going to be, working with this child in a way that I agree with, I feel, what if I don't feel like they're supporting them the way they should be? Because I mean, we all kind of hear these horror stories, or maybe we've grown up around people that, were in foster care, or maybe their families fostered and the family that fostered was not a very good family, you know what I mean? And so can you speak a little bit to just some of those hesitations?
I mean, the hesitation has to do with, your expectations and your training. There are many, many foster parents that turn over within the first 3 months. That is a 100% lack of training. And then there's also, I mean, we have this experience after we take kids to Disneyland every single year. We have 350 kids that have been separated from their siblings. We coordinate their foster parents to reunite them, have the best day on earth, photographers, everything. Half of our volunteers want to adopt those kids and take them home right now. And so what we have to do is we have to give them a cool down period. We're like, listen, contact us in 2 weeks. If you even just want to, adoption is not even on the table. Just if you ever want to see your kid again, we can try to, and after we say that, 15% actually call us back. And that's because, when you go into foster, you're so excited, some people go in because they have fertility and they can't have kids, and then they get to the reality of it and, they get deterred. It's really just understanding that you're going in for the child. They're in foster care because there's a need. There's a need for you to be there and go through that with them, right? It is scary that they're acting out. But all they're used to is the moment they act out, they get a new home. That's their reality, and that's what they're used to. They just, hey, you had a disagreement, you got an argument, you did something bad. The next day, there's a social worker at his door taking his stuff in trash bags. That right there is, I can't imagine what they go through. And I think parents need to just be more informed, and not jump the step. And I get a lot of comments that say, I'm trying to be a foster parent. She won't call me back. She won't do this. And to be honest with you, it's because social workers get hit up by so many flaky people that they start to get deterred. Like I love what I do because I'm like sitting here like showing. I'm sorry,
you're fine.
I'm like revitalizing that hope in social workers that, it's still possible, that people do care. These people aren't going to flake on you because they're so used to of like, okay, we'll set up a time to come talk about it. And they don't show up.
Yeah.
And, that affects their work nationwide. Social workers feel the fatigue, and then that breaks down the relationship between the foster parent and the social worker. And, it's a lot. And then, we don't even know if the social worker has to deal with this drama like 50 times a week of another kid, something happened, how to fix that. And they have too many cases, and they're not making good money. They're making money to survive. And, I don't want to be disrespectful when I say they don't make good money, depending on what part of the country you live in, but they're putting up with a lot. The things they're going through their mental health on their own. Like, they should get free access to their own mental health, for counselors, says they go through it, right? Because it takes a special person. So I just say to the parents that want to do it, like, if you want to do it, do it. Is it going to be easy? No. Nothing in life that's worth it is easy. If you're trying to change a child's life, that's work. And if you meet a foster parent, even if you think they're doing it for the money, support them. Change the narrative for them. Make them feel like, wow, like, people think I'm a really good person. Maybe I should be. Maybe they'll help me. And, I think that's really the narrative we have to change.
That's one of the biggest impacts you can make is being there for, a youth, and being there for somebody who doesn't have anything, especially kids and teens and at-risk youth. When I think about, fostering, and I've gone the adoption route. I actually adopted my son from birth, and in knowing the foster care system and everything, back in the day, they used to have big brother and big sister. I don't know if they have that anymore, but for somebody who is not wanting to become a foster parent, but wants to become more involved in a volunteer, what does that intermediary step look like? And is that something through your organization or something that you can direct them through? Talk to us a little bit about that, because I know for me, when I first got into it, I went to the Corona Police Department, and I found out from somebody that they had a mentoring program for kids that were in juvenile hall. So I went through the background screening, got all that done, got the fingerprints, and wound up being assigned a kid that was in juvenile hall that got out and wound up mentoring them. But what can people do if they want to be a little bit more involved, but not as involved as a foster parent?
Yeah, if you're looking at involved once per quarter, so once every 3 months, or once, twice, 2 to 4 times a year, Together You Rise is the best place to go. You can go to our website, Together You Rise, hit the volunteer form, insert your email, and then we'll share with you the opportunities available, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's dropping off items, or whether it's, taking a kid shopping during the holidays. The other step is, if you feel that you're ready for a 1 time per month, 2-year commitment, is be a CASA, be a court-appointed special advocate, and support them. We are launching a new program next month called Foster Together. And that program is made for families, friends, or groups that want to support a foster family. So you're not working with the kids. You're there to find the needs of what the foster family and help them. So we ask everyone that as a group commitment to be a total of $150. So everyone's pitching in $20 to $40 a month individually in your group. And you are buying things that they need to support their family. Because at the end of the day, it's like treating your employees right. And that's something that we're learning a lot about as we grow, is retention. And these people are the reason we can help a lot of kids. How do we keep them on our team? And this is the same thing for foster parents. These people are the people that are handling and facing and working and changing and being supportive, and they're everything to this kid. And so they need to be supported. They need to be showed love. They need to be showed that they matter. And I think that's a big portion that we're missing. But back to the original question, if you want once a month real work, be a CASA. If you want to just give back quarterly, and as occasionally when you have the privilege to do so, I think Together You Rise is a great place.
Awesome.
Well, and kind of to that same point, for people who maybe are interested in doing a little bit more, maybe they do want to consider fostering, how can they start educating themselves? Where can they go to start to learn more about what it would really mean to do that?
Yeah, so every foster agency does like a foster parent orientation before you become a foster parent. I would highly recommend that. There are foster parent groups on Facebook and other websites. I would caution you on that, because that's where people are going to share their stories. And, it's, from what I've seen, it's difficult. Sometimes I'm just like, how are you a foster parent? Like, how did you get past the gates and you are taking care of these children? Because the question you ask is in your training. You should know so I would caution you on that, just because it's it's raw and real, but it is also, foster parents have to be educated. You have to be accountable. It's a job. I mean, think about this. Every aspect of a child's life in the foster care system, you need a higher ed degree to deal with them, whether it's, and I'm sorry I said deal, but to be a part of their lives, whether you're their social worker, you need a master's degree, whether you're, their on the psych side or the counseling side, you need a degree. CPS workers need a degree. It's just when it comes down to the parent, there's no education needed at any point. It's just, here you go. Here's your 12 hours of training, and good luck. And I say that with, they do get resources, but man, it takes, I think normal people should have to take parenting classes to have children. It's a lot of work. And if you're now working with a trauma-informed youth with 12 to 15 hours and you expect success, there is no possible way. But, back to the original question, because I'm very passionate about the subject, go contact your local foster agency. Just Google the county that you live in. A bunch will pop up. They're private organizations. And find out when their foster parent orientation is. And I would just say, they're not going to respond to you tomorrow. They're not in sales or marketing. They focus on the children. So they may be a little delayed on that. But they will provide you with a day where you can go with your family at your luxury, hopefully now even on Zoom or Skype or Google Meets or whatever, and you can learn about it. I think that's honestly the best way to get a real, true look at it.
Awesome. Well, and I want people to have an opportunity to know how to get a hold of you. It looks like the best way is probably either your website. They can also go find you on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, just go into, sorry, the sun's setting here, but go into Facebook and just type in Together We Rise, or go to togetherwerise.org and just give us your email, and that's where we really share our opportunities. It's been a little bit different. We've limited our volunteer opportunities. We do private volunteer events right now. We don't open it to the public, and that's whether a church reaches out or interestingly, there is a lot of groups that do want to make a difference right now. We're not really sharing those publicly just because COVID is real. Whether you believe it or not, it affects everyone differently. And so we want to be respectful of that fact. As a young person, I'm in a privileged position it doesn't affect me statistically as much as it would for someone that, is caring for the elderly. And so, we just are limited on volunteer opportunities probably for the next 4 months. But if you do have a group that wants to volunteer in your own private home or your own private business, just with you all, we do have those opportunities. They're just not something we share publicly. It's just for everyone's safety and, to respect everyone's views on what's going on.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that people are going to have, this information. If you've been watching and you've gotten some value from this, please share it out. We really want to get these messages out to people so that there's more understanding around not just the system, but what all of us can do, because it really does have an impact on all of society. And that was one of the things that we kind of touched on earlier, but I would love for you to just kind of close with, what your thoughts are around this question of how does it impact society as a whole when we all help support kids who have been through trauma like this?
I mean, I think we've all experienced it at one time, things being stolen from us, from cars getting broken into, to seeing people on the side of the freeways, wherever you live. It's sad, and you always wonder, what could they have done, or how did they get addicted to change that? And to be honest, a large majority of it, from about 70%, experience foster care. And when you turn 18 and you get kicked out and you have no parents, you don't, it's not whether you chose drugs or not. It's like you have nothing, no one's there for you. And that's where we really can make a difference and be that phone call that they could make, or be that mentor that gave them the right advice, or honestly just believing in a child, whether you met them once at a shopping spree and saying, hey, like, you're going to do great things with your life. I see it in you. And that kid to one day say, hey, like, I wasn't the only one that saw it. That's where we would really see the impact in society, because they're not going to end up in jail. They're not going to end up homeless. They're going to be, productive members of society because one person believed in them.
That's so powerful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to also share this comment from Zubair. He says, absolutely, we can shape a better future for our children by improving their self-image, as they are born with talents not anyone can teach them, nor anyone can teach them. So yeah, I think that's so true. You know, when we let children know how important, how valuable they really are, it changes not just their world, but the world around them. So I just so greatly appreciate the work you're doing and for taking the time to come here and share your message with us. Any closing thoughts from you, Christopher?
Yeah, no, I'm super passionate about this subject, and I just want to just applaud you and everybody that goes into the organization that you impact so many people. Like I said, I've spoken to so many at-risk kids and kids in foster care, kids on the street. I was one of those kids on the street. So what you and your team are doing is massively important, and thank you so much for having the heart and the soul to do that. Whatever, since I'm local to you, we'll talk offline, but whatever support I can give you as well from my aspect, I would love to do that as well, because I'm super, super, super passionate about our youth and what we could do today to change some of the shit that we've done that's kind of screwed them up, and take some responsibility for that as a world to help heal our youth, because they're our voice for tomorrow. They're our leadership for tomorrow. So I just want to applaud and say thank you so much for what it is that you do.
Amen. Thank you all so much for you allowing me to use this platform to share the good message.
Thank you. And hang on for just a second. You want to thank again the audience for being here with us. You know, you guys are amazing. You support us every week. You're always here with your comments and your love, and we appreciate you so much for that. So lots of love going out to all of you tonight, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. We'll see you next week.